Something inside me, something buried deep, began scratching at the edges of my memory. A story my mother once told me as a child. About a hospital. About chaos. About a mix-up she never wanted to discuss again. But before I could dive deeper into the memory, my phone buzzed. A message. From Emily. "Did you ever find anything strange in your house?" I froze. Why would she ask that? Did she know I found the note? I typed back slowly. No. Why? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. No reason. I just feel like this place holds a lot of your history. My history. How would she know anything about that? That night, I barely slept again. Every creak, every sound made my skin crawl. Around 2 a.m., I got up to get water and noticed something that turned my blood ice cold. A shadow in the hallway. Standing still. Watching. I flicked on the light. Nothing. But on the floor. A tiny wet footprint. A footprint too small to be an adult's. And too big to be one of my children's. My heart raced. I checked every room, every closet, every window. Nothing was disturbed. Everything was locked. But the footprint was real. The next day, determined to confront the situation, I asked Emily about her past. Where she grew up. Who her family was. Why she decided to be a babysitter. Her answers were vague. I moved a lot. I don't really have family. I like helping people. All said with a softness that almost made me feel guilty for suspecting her. Almost. Later that afternoon, I noticed her staring at me again. Not casually. Not accidentally. Like she was searching for something in my face. Something familiar. "Do I remind you of someone?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Her breath caught. Her eyes widened. And for the first time since I met her, she looked scared. "Yes," she whispered. "You do." Before I could ask what she meant, the doorbell rang. I stepped away to answer it, and when I returned, Emily was gone. I never thought hiring a babysitter could put my entire life in danger. I never thought someone could walk into my home, smiling, polite, harmless, and know things about me that I had never told another human being. But let me start with the moment everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning, quiet, ordinary, forgettable. I had rushed through breakfast, dressed the kids, packed their lunches, and tried not to look as exhausted as I felt. Motherhood can make you look like you haven't slept since 1998. I opened the door expecting to meet a hopeful college student looking for part-time work. But the girl standing on my porch wasn't nervous. Or shy. Or distracted. She was prepared. Too prepared. "Hi, I'm Emily," she said, her voice soft but steady. "You must be Laura." I froze for half a second. I hadn't told her my name yet. I chalked it up to the email conversation, forced a smile, and invited her inside. She stepped in slowly, looking around the house with an expression I couldn't quite place, part admiration, part calculation. From the beginning, something felt off. And not the kind of odd you can ignore. The kind that crawls up your spine and whispers that something is terribly wrong. Still, I needed help, so I did what tired mothers do. I swallowed my instincts and convinced myself I was imagining things. She sat on the couch, crossing her hands neatly on her lap. Her clothes were simple, her makeup minimal, but her eyes watched everything. I began telling her about my kids, schedules, allergies, routines. She listened politely, nodding at the right moments. But then she started asking questions. Not about them. About me. "What time do you usually go to bed? Do you often stay home alone at night? Did you grow up around here? Do you ever feel like someone is following you? Do you have family nearby?" Some questions were subtle. Others felt like cold fingers pressing against my neck. I tried to laugh it off. Oh, motherhood. I barely have time to sleep. She didn't laugh. She just whispered, right, that makes sense, and wrote something down in a small notebook she kept hidden between her hands. I saw my name on the top of the page. Not my full name. Not Laura. My birth name. The one I had stopped using decades ago. I didn't react outwardly. Inside, something cracked. Why would she know that? How would she know that? But before I could ask anything, the kids burst into the room, and she turned instantly sweet, warm, attentive, the perfect babysitter. Except, she barely looked at them. Her eyes were back on me, studying me with unsettling precision. The first red flag came that night. I came home earlier than expected. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I checked the kids, they were asleep, safe. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. My bedroom door was open. I never leave it open. I stepped inside slowly. Everything looked normal, almost too normal. My jewelry box was slightly moved. My perfume bottle was in a different spot. My closet door wasn't fully closed. And then I saw it, my framed baby photo, the one on my nightstand. It had been picked up. Someone had held it. Someone had studied it. As I stood there, my phone buzzed. A text from Emily. I hope you made it home safe. I hadn't told her I was on my way. I hadn't told her anything. And yet she knew. That night, I barely slept. Something was wrong with Emily. Deeply, terribly wrong. But I didn't know the truth yet. I didn't know the reason she kept staring at me. I didn't know why she watched me sleep from the hallway when she thought I couldn't see her. I didn't know why she wrote down details about my life instead of caring for my kids. What I didn't know was the one thing that would shatter everything I believed about my past. Emily wasn't a stranger. She was looking for me. And she had been looking, for years. The next morning, I convinced myself to stay calm. Sleep deprivation can turn shadows into monsters, right? I told myself I was being dramatic, paranoid, unreasonable. But paranoia doesn't explain proof. At 11:32 a.m., while I was at work, I checked the nanny cam in the living room, something I rarely did. And what I saw made my stomach twist. Emily wasn't playing with the kids. She wasn't cleaning. She wasn't cooking. She was pacing. Back and forth, like a caged animal. Her lips moved as if she was murmuring something, repeating it again and again. And then she walked toward my hallway. Toward my bedroom. I watched as she opened the door, slowly, deliberately. The camera caught only a sliver of her profile, but she looked emotional. Not angry. Not scared. Emotional. Almost like she recognized the place. I closed the app before I could see more. My chest was too tight. My hands were shaking. I needed the workday to end. When I got home that evening, she greeted me with a smile that felt rehearsed. Your kids were angels today, she said. My room looked different this morning, I replied quietly, watching her reaction. But she didn't flinch. If anything, she looked relieved. Oh. I didn't go in there, she said softly. A lie. A calm, practiced lie. I wanted to fire her on the spot. But something in me, some mix of curiosity and fear, stopped me. Instead, I pretended everything was fine. Thank you for today, Emily. Same time tomorrow? She nodded, her eyes softening, almost grateful. Of course. When she left, I locked the door and checked every inch of my bedroom. And that's when I found it. Behind the mirror in my dresser, taped to the back like a hidden message, was a small slip of paper. On it, written in someone's handwriting, not mine, were 3 words. Do you remember? My heart began pounding so loudly I thought the walls could hear it. Remember what? What was I supposed to remember? And because, she added, before telling you, I went to meet someone else first. I lifted my eyes. Who? She swallowed. Your mother. The room went silent. What? My voice was barely a breath. You spoke to her? Emily nodded with a grief I didn't understand. She didn't recognize me at first. But when I showed her the photo, she broke down. Completely. She told me everything. She told me she'd been told her baby died. She told me she never got to see the body. She told me she always felt something was wrong, like a piece of her heart had been ripped out. My lips trembled. A faint childhood memory stirred, my mother crying quietly in the kitchen on certain nights, staring at nothing. She wants to see you, Emily whispered. She's been waiting. My throat tightened. I didn't realize I was crying until tears fell onto my hands. Why didn't she tell me? I asked. Emily shook her head. She didn't want to reopen the wound if it wasn't real. She didn't want to burden you. And she was scared of what you'd think of her. The room felt unbearably heavy. Emily, I whispered, I don't know what to feel. I know, she said softly. But I'm not here to force anything. I just wanted you to know the truth. After this, if you never want to see me again, I'll disappear. I just needed to meet you once. To know you were real. She turned to leave. Something inside me broke open. Emily, I called, my voice trembling. She stopped. Don't go. She turned around, her face a mixture of hope and fear. I walked slowly toward her, and for the first time I could see it clearly. Her chin. Her nose. Her eyes. Features that mirrored mine in ways I'd never noticed before. I wrapped my arms around her, and she collapsed into me, sobbing into my shoulder like a child finally finding home. We stayed like that for a long time. 2 weeks later, we stood side by side outside my mother's house. Something inside me, something buried deep, began scratching at the edges of my memory. A story my mother once told me as a child. About a hospital. About chaos. About a mix-up she never wanted to discuss again. But before I could dive deeper into the memory, my phone buzzed. A message. From Emily. Did you ever find anything strange in your house? I froze. Why would she ask that? Did she know I found the note? I typed back slowly. No. Why? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. No reason. I just feel like this place holds a lot of your history. My history. How would she know anything about that? That night, I barely slept again. Every creak, every sound made my skin crawl. Around 2 a.m., I got up to get water and noticed something that turned my blood ice cold. A shadow in the hallway. Standing still. Watching. I flicked on the light. Nothing. But on the floor. A tiny wet footprint. A footprint too small to be an adult's. And too big to be one of my children's. My heart raced. I checked every room, every closet, every window. Nothing was disturbed. Everything was locked. But the footprint was real. The next day, determined to confront the situation, I asked Emily about her past. Where she grew up. Who her family was. Why she decided to be a babysitter. Her answers were vague. I moved a lot. I don't really have family. I like helping people. All said with a softness that almost made me feel guilty for suspecting her. Almost. Later that afternoon, I noticed her staring at me again. Not casually. Not accidentally. Like she was searching for something in my face. Something familiar. Do I remind you of someone? I asked, trying to sound casual. Her breath caught. Her eyes widened. And for the first time since I met her, she looked scared. Yes, she whispered. You do. Before I could ask what she meant, the doorbell rang. I stepped away to answer it, and when I returned, Emily was gone. Not just gone, rapidly gone, like she'd fled the house the moment I stepped into the hallway. She didn't come the next day. Or the day after. No messages. No explanation. Just silence. Until one night, 4 days later, when she showed up at my door. Her face pale. Her hands shaking. Her eyes red from crying. "I need to tell you something," she said. "It's about who you are. About who I am. And about what they did to us." That was the moment my world began to crack open. Emily stood on my doorstep trembling, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if she were holding her body together by force. Rain clung to her hair. Her breathing was uneven. She looked nothing like the calm, calculating girl who had walked into my home days earlier. "Laura, please. Can I come in?" she whispered. I hesitated for a second too long, and panic flickered in her eyes, as if she feared I would shut the door and erase her only chance to speak. I stepped aside. "Come in." She entered, but she didn't sit. She stood in the center of my living room like someone preparing to confess to a crime. "I didn't want to scare you," she said softly. "I never meant for any of this to happen the way it did." "Emily, what's going on? Why have you been watching me? Why were you in my room?" She closed her eyes. "I wasn't watching you," she said. "I was comparing." The answer made no sense. "Comparing what?" She swallowed hard, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded, weathered photograph. Her hand shook as she held it out. "I need you to look at this." I hesitated, then took it. The photograph was old, maybe 30 years. The corners were worn, the image slightly faded. It showed a young woman holding a newborn baby in a hospital bed. But what made my knees weaken? What made the room tilt? Was the woman's face. She looked exactly like me. Same eyes. Same smile. Same cheekbones. As if someone had taken a picture of me and aged it down by decades. "My adoptive parents gave me that photo when I turned 18, Emily whispered. "They said it was the only thing they had left from when I was found." "Found?" I repeated. Emily nodded, tears welling. "I wasn't adopted normally. I was abandoned. Left at a hospital in another state with no birth certificate, no records, nothing. Just this photo taped inside a blanket." A chill spread across my chest. "My mother had a baby before me," I said slowly, trying to reconcile the impossible. She told me the baby died." Emily's face broke. "She lied." My heartbeat stumbled. Everything inside me felt suddenly heavy. "She lied," Emily repeated, her voice cracking. "I spent years searching for that woman in the photo. I looked everywhere. Through public records, hospital archives, online databases, nothing. But then..." Her eyes lifted to mine with a trembling softness. "Then I found you." My throat dried. "Me? But how?" "You posted a picture last year," she said. "You were smiling. You were holding your daughter. And behind you on the shelf was a framed photo of your mother." I felt my stomach drop. She looked exactly like the woman in my picture. I couldn't believe it. At first I thought I was imagining it. But the resemblance was perfect. Her voice broke. "And then I looked at you. Laura, you look like the newborn in my photo grown up." My pulse hammered. No, that's impossible. My mother would have told me if." "She didn't want you to know," Emily whispered, hugging herself again. "And I needed to be sure." "So you followed me," I said. "You watched me. You took notes. You went into my room." She nodded, her eyes glistening with desperation. "I wasn't stalking you. I was trying to confirm that we could be related. I needed to see if you had the same birthmark, the same habits, the same facial features." A tear streamed down her cheek. "I wasn't comparing your life. I was comparing your face. I was comparing us. I stepped backward, overwhelmed. Confused. Angry. Terrified. But also, something else. Something uncomfortable. Something that tasted like recognition. Because deep inside, beneath all the fear and suspicion, a memory clicked. A conversation from when I was 9 years old, overheard accidentally. My mother crying. My father whispering, "Don't bring it up again. What's done is done." Back then, I didn't understand. Now, pieces were aligning faster than I could stop them. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I whispered. Emily looked shattered. "Would you have believed me? Or would you have called me insane and shut the door in my face?" She shook her head, wiping tears. "I wanted to wait until I was certain. I wanted to be right before I shattered your world." Silence stretched between us, heavy and electric. Then she reached into her bag again, pulling out a small envelope. "I took a DNA test last month," she said quietly. "And I found a partial match." My lungs froze. A partial, sibling match. I stared at her, unable to move. "Laura," she whispered. "We're not strangers. We never were." I felt a tremor move through me. "Who are you really?" I whispered. And Emily answered with the words that detonated everything I believed about my life. "I'm your sister." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, too bright, too loud, even in absolute silence. "I'm your sister." The words echoed in my skull like a bell rung too close to my ear. Emily, this quiet, unsettling, mysterious girl, was claiming to be part of my blood. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "That can't be true. My mother told me her first baby died during delivery. There was a funeral." Emily's eyes softened with a kind of sadness that felt too old for her young face. "I know what she told you," she said gently. "But you need to understand something, Laura. Mothers don't always lie out of cruelty. Sometimes they lie out of grief. Or shame. Or fear." I sank onto the couch because my legs couldn't hold me anymore. Emily took one step forward, then hesitated, as if afraid I'd tell her to stop. "I didn't come to ruin your life," she whispered. "I came because I've spent my entire life wondering who I am. Where I belong. And then I found you, someone who looks exactly like the mother I never had a chance to know." I covered my mouth as tears pricked my eyes. "What happened?" I finally managed to ask. If you're really my sister, what happened to you?" Emily exhaled shakily. "I was part of a baby trafficking scandal," she said. "Hospitals, adoption agencies, people making money off newborns who were labeled as stillborn, then sold under the table." My blood ran cold. My adoptive parents told me when I turned 18. They said they loved me but didn't want to hide the truth anymore. They confessed they'd paid cash to skip the paperwork. They were told I was abandoned. But when I found that photo in the blanket, I knew someone had lied. I felt like I was listening to a story on television, horrifying, distant, except it was happening in my own living room. Emily opened the envelope she'd brought and handed me a printed report. My fingers shook as I unfolded it. DNA match, probable sibling relationship, 51% shared genetic material. My breath stuttered. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be real. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I whispered. Emily's voice cracked. "Because I didn't know how. Because I was terrified you would reject me. Because I've been alone my whole life, Laura. And I didn't want to lose the only person who might be family." Tears streamed down her face. Emily reached for my hand. I held hers. When the door opened, my mother's face crumbled, pain, recognition, love, regret, everything flooding at once. She whispered, "My baby." But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Emily. Emily stepped into her arms and for the first time in her life, she was held by the woman who had brought her into the world. I cried. My mother cried. Emily cried. 3 lives stitched back together after decades of lies. The DNA test confirmed it officially. Emily was my sister. And I had almost thrown her away. But now she's part of our lives. My kids call her Aunt Emily. And the girl who once watched me from the hallway now sits at my kitchen table, laughing, alive, safe. People always say truth sets you free. But sometimes the truth brings you home. The silence after that confession was so heavy it felt like it had weight. The mother held her baby close to her chest, as if she needed something real to anchor her while her mind spun out of control. The nanny was still crying, breathing shakily, as if each word she had spoken had been torn from deep inside her. I didn't want to scare you. I just wanted to know if it was really you, if you were actually my sister, she whispered. The mother didn't answer. Her heart was pounding, her mind replaying every detail. The photo. The strange questions. The nervousness. Everything suddenly made sense. Finally, with a trembling voice, she said. You said you had proof, show it to me. The nanny nodded with shaking hands. She stood, reached into her bag, and pulled out a worn folder. She placed it on the table between them. The mother hesitated before opening it. Inside were an adoption certificate, an old photograph of 2 newborns in an incubator, a handwritten note with the name of her own mother, a medical report describing the birth of twin girls, but only one baby officially registered. The mother felt the floor drop beneath her feet. This can't be real. It is, the nanny replied softly. It took me years to find this. When I found you, I panicked. I didn't know whether to approach you as a sister, or disappear. The mother covered her face with her hands. She began to cry. Not out of fear. Not out of anger. But out of shock. Grief. And a truth that had been hidden her entire life. The nanny stepped back. If you want me to leave forever, I'll understand. No, the mother said, standing. Don't go. The nanny looked at her, eyes wide. If all this is true, if you really are my sister, then you've spent your whole life looking for me. I'm not letting you walk away now. They stared at each other for a few seconds. Then, as if something inside both of them cracked open and healed at the same time, they hugged. A long, deep, soul-level hug. A hug of 2 lives that had unknowingly been missing their other half. The baby started laughing in the mother's arms, almost celebrating their reunion. The mother smiled for the first time since all this started. Come, she said, shifting the baby. Your nephew wants to meet you. The nanny, now sister, touched the baby's tiny hand, tears still in her eyes. Hi, little one. I'm your aunt. The mother laughed softly. Never thought I'd say that out loud, but, welcome home. They sat together on the couch, going through the documents, the old photos the nanny had saved, searching for clues, connecting memories, rebuilding a story that had been stolen from them at birth. For the first time in a long time, the house felt peaceful. The mother looked at the young woman next to her, and something clicked deep inside. A new story was beginning. And this time, it finally included family.